Kat.
Hey there. So we have a minute to go. So
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Felomena Deogratsias. I am here to host a Q&A with the director of a wonderful film that has just been screened, Mr. Emancipation, a Walter Perry story. Welcome and thank you, Preston Chase, for being here.
Thanks for having me. And thank you, Silverwave.
Yeah, so I was just going to say as well, I want to thank Silver Wave Film Festival and the New Brunswick Film Corp for putting this together, and as well as incorporating Black Lives Matter Fredericton, which is I'm one of the core organizers of Black Lives Matter Fredericton, so it's very much an honor to be here. And I'd also like to thank all of our veterans and all Canadian service members in uniform for the sacrifice to safeguard our national security here and abroad. Preston Chase, it's so wonderful to be speaking with you about your film. You are a seventh generation African Canadian born in Windsor, Ontario, the director and producer of this incredible film, which is about the emancipation celebration of your uncle, your great uncle, Walter Perry, the celebrations which started in 1931. And that was an international festival that brought all walks of life together, all people from all walks of life together to witness an amazing parade, barbecue, pageant, and so much more. So thanks again for being here with us.
No worries.
Yeah, how has this process been for you? The film festival process.
As a secondary school teacher, in COVID, very interesting. So when I had first started, my expectation was if it gets into 2 film festivals, I'm happy. But so far, it's up to 23 film festivals. It's touched on 4 continents. And this is the third, this would be the 3rd Canadian screening. So it's been a roller coaster, especially on weekends, lots of work and just making sure, you get the message out there, right? So, and I like I said, I did this just for, it was a story that just needed to be done because I just found my uncle's life compelling. The different things that I learned from him. As you saw in the film, he was eccentric and then some, peacocks, but there was always a purpose. Even before that, as was mentioned in the film, he sold real estate, drove taxi, he ran some rum, and he was on both sides of prohibition. So that's just how crafty he was. But aside from that, he thought about things collectively, which he was community first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that you can't really take away from Uncle Walt. I should say later, after I finished completing the film, I found out Uncle Walt was offered 25 honorary doctorates from American colleges. But, sadly, he turned him down. And the reason is because his younger brother, Roy, Uncle Roy, had the same stature. And he just felt, and Roy was a dentist, and he just felt if he accepted one, Uncle Walt would have became a doctor, and it would have caused too much confusion in the family and also the community. So, yeah,
He has a good sense of humor, you know?
yeah, yeah.
He's a funny guy. I really like that, the larger than life. And as you say, when you say talking about your uncle and how he was on the both sides of prohibition, an uncle of mine has, I'm sure other people may have heard this saying, "Hook or by crook, you'll get the job done," which was incredible. I want to know a little bit about what brought you to telling the story. You're saying this came out of necessity. Could you talk a little bit about what that necessity is about?
Well, it's like again, aside from it being a compelling story, bring bring greater awareness about the event, the significance of it. He brought in millions upon millions of dollars to the city of Windsor, unlike no other. He really promoted racial harmony like no other of his time. You saw that generation in their speaking. They're in their 70s and 80s now. They got jobs because they weren't getting jobs here as other kids were. In private sector or even public sector jobs for their summer jobs. So that weekend, as many of them told me, the participants said that the money that they made just on that weekend alone would last them all year. So that's like, I mean, that was just great income from that for them. Aside from that, then there was also the just the fact that he brought in like the black Americans, and you saw the civil rights leaders that arrived. They had an opportunity to test their messages on a mixed crowd, unlike anywhere else in the States. And also they felt safer when they came to Canada. They weren't worried about being lynched as what would happen at that particular time. So the Jim Crow rules really didn't apply to them when they arrived. And Uncle Walt just convinced them, this is the place to be. Going back to your original question, another reason was to bring greater awareness to Black Canadian culture in general. And I don't mean this by, where you're from or any of those other things. It's like, if you're here, you still have to actually endure what a lot of the generations that have been here for, I'm seventh, but then I have friends that are sixth, seventh, there's 8, 9, 10 generations if you go to Nova Scotia. And New Brunswick, with their rich history, they've been here for generations as well. I wanted to show that because I actually, as I've been going around at different festivals, I always say, Black Canadian culture, it's like the Black Panther. We're not from Wakanda. We are from Canada.
Yes,
I love that.
that's
Where are you from? Where are you from? Are you Brazilian? I travel around the world, and everybody, they get so confused. They're like, "Oh, you've been here. You've been here. Oh yeah, you must be Brazilian." I'm like, "No, I'm a Black Canadian." It's like, What is that? We've never heard of it. What planet? Where did they beam you in? So so that was another thing, and it really showed. Also, the going back to significance of the ties to Black American history.
Yeah.
I like to say is that those that have been here for generations, we represent at least 90 some odd percent of American history. You saw at least, let me break it down for you. Like my great whatever grandfather, William Parker, led the second battle leading up to the Civil War. And there was a ruckus that broke out in his house in Christiana, Pennsylvania. He's known as a villain or hero there. And he was forced to leave to get out of there and stay with a good friend of his, guy by the name of Frederick Douglass. And it was Frederick Douglass that said, I think you should go to Canada and hang out there for a little while. And then soon my great whatever grandmother, showed up there. But that's one piece of it. My last name hails from Nova Scotia. But I'm also thinking it's New Brunswick, but that's fine. Like Pompey Chase, I haven't made that connection yet. But I'm going to figure it out. But so far, our family tree says Nova Scotia. But you saw Spider Jones, as animated as he is, right? Spider was amazing. But his family actually, during the Nate Turner riots, they were there.
Wow.
They were there. Then, just to throw everything off, you saw Elise Harding Davis. Well, her DNA, her great whatever uncle is a guy by the name of Robert E. Lee, General Lee. Yes, and that's what I mean. And then you have the Mulders, you have other families in Windsor. They have General Brock connections because of his illegal affair, his hidden affair that he had down in southwestern Ontario. So that's one of the big pieces is that we exist, and I love telling people, it's like when they ask me where I'm from, I'm like going, oh, no, Canada came to us, we never came to it. And that's
Right.
why I'm so proud of Stephen Harper when he said, during his little racist rant saying, oh yeah, old stock Canadians. I'm like going, hey, that includes us. I called
Yes.
up my buddy George L.A. Clark. I said, hey, Dr. Clark, hey, we're old stock Canadians now. And it was just like, when the needle goes off the record, you're, so that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened there. So it's like, oh, you guys don't, you don't fit the bill. But, as I explained to you before, Black Canadian culture, like the larger society looks at it as like this monolithic thing, circular, right? Whereas here it's really an inverted triangle, is because,
Yes.
at the bottom, no one knows we exist. And this is what causes a lot of friction between different communities as well, which is sad. And then one corner you have the Africans, and the other corner you have those of Caribbean descent. No one ventures out to the center too often. And
Yeah.
I wanted to, and then say, oh, we're all suffering these same things. It's like when you saw the education piece, when you saw the employment piece of how a lot of the folks in the film, they like, thank goodness growing up in Southwestern Ontario. And by the way, dedication to Journey. Yes, I was born and raised in South Detroit because we are south of Detroit. But thank goodness that they had that option where, it was my grandmother's and my mom's generation, they could pack their bags, and even there are people out of my generation as well, and they would go take jobs in Detroit, especially they knew they weren't going to get into the public sector. There's no way. And it's just like, even though we had this exact same, and I want to point that out as well, we have the exact same educational attainment. You can see that now. You go to any elementary school, everyone's just, holding hands saying we are the world. You go to high school, secondary schools, who's on your team? Everybody's participating, same thing. You go to university, and then all of a sudden, once you get out, there's this glass ceiling that says, you have to stop there. And I just wanted to really point that out. And I thought it was a bit embarrassing, especially when my 97-year-old godmother was talking about her employment, how she had to go get a green card and go work in the States. She went to Detroit, and this was actually before, I want to point that out, before affirmative action was ever signed. Everyone knew that if you go to Detroit, because Blacks and also whites equally would value our Canadian education, but Canada wouldn't actually show any respect to what we had.
Yeah, that really resonated, I felt, specifically because there's a lot of issues today with job insecurity for Black Canadians all over our country still. That's something that people in my provinces, Black people in my province, have struggled with as well. And so to see that this has been something that was ongoing and has been happening, it shows that it's not, these issues don't come out of a vacuum, that this has been something that's been going on. And also the idea that, I think it was beautifully said in your film, where you depicted how, it was the same kind of education. Black and white children are going to the same schools in Canada, getting the same education, like you said. But then it comes to jobs, not possible. You have to go to the United States instead. And so it's a very it's interesting to learn that there wasn't job security then, and still seeing that there's some of those issues that experience today. And so I think it's important, though, to highlight the issues that have been happening to Black communities since the beginning in Canada, because we often don't learn about Black Canadian history, which is actually just Canadian history.
And that's all it is. And I also want to highlight the fact, because even now, what I love about this country of ours is socially, you can venture into any culture. It's great. Like, I mean, growing up, I was bilingual. I spoke Serbian. Hey, kako si, dobro, dobro, ja sam Preston. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I worked in a company. Then you had the Italians that lived right next door, and you can actually go over to Genovese's place, and actually you're having pizza or whatever. But you get to do that here, unlike the United States. And that's one thing that I value. Our friends, our close friends, it's like they don't have to look like me. And this is the wonderful thing about living in this country. But I think we use that as sort of like, okay, well, you're getting this, but you don't really need to work. You're just like, okay, all right. I think I'll just hang out here for a while in the house and do nothing all day. But thank you, and I'll feel really comfortable about that. Yes.
Right. One of the things that I also think is so important about this film, because not only is it an incredible story that teaches so many, but I think this is something that should be taught in all schools. And you're an educator yourself. Is there any way you can bring this into schools with a teaching guide, or at least at the school you teach and perhaps the schools in your community?
It's so far, like, I mean, it's played in universities. It's played at New South Wales University in Sydney, Australia. That's where it got its debut. And then I'm like getting the idea. And I just recently had the Upper Canada School Board of Eastern Ontario. They're including it for Black History Month. And then the Eastern Ontario School Board, Catholic, I should say. So I got the publics and the Catholics. See how everyone's coming together? It's perfect.
Very Walt, very Walt-esque.
Yeah, and so like I mean, yeah, like I mean, you don't do documentaries to make money, but in terms of the awareness, oh, absolutely. I've also had a couple props at U of T said that they would be interested as soon as it comes out after I'm finished the festival run. So I like, I mean, for me, it's just important that it's done. And I mentioned to you earlier, the process was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a pain. It was a lot of sacrifice, but it was like that's one thing that I really most enjoyed was the process. Yeah.
Talk a bit more about like what were some of your notable moments of the process itself.
Well, like, I mean, for instance, the Martin Luther King section, I didn't know how that was going to come together. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm looking at all his mentors and I'm like going, oh, they were all here and they all came at different times. And I'm like going, oh, I think they go together. And first I'm thinking, okay, well, no, he was influenced. And then it was like, that really had nothing to do with Gandhi. But then it's like, you have to inference and just like say, oh, wait a minute. He saw this. He saw as I have a dream, because my uncle's generation, they were, I mean, he was involved with the Central Citizens Association, as I pointed out. And you had so many different organizations that were going on at that time. And they were doing quite a bit that a lot of people had no clue in Canada or even in the United States, as I've been getting feedback from it. But some of the things that Martin Luther King did, it was like Martin Luther King was only 27 years old in that picture. My uncle was actually late into his 50s. And in the Black community, you have like that pecking order where it's just like, those are your elders. And so a lot of those men actually, spread that and influence like a lot of the civil rights leaders in the States, given the fact that it's Remembrance Day. We talk about the number 2 battalion, which was, was really important. That, and I'm glad I mentioned North Buxton, because that was Arthur Alexander that actually complained and said, we want to participate too. And they're like, no, that's white man's war. You cannot. And the community was offended when they segregated. That's really, if you look at it, that's really one of the first times in Canadian history, you brought something together and you segregated it. Out of that, it created a movement in itself, which a lot of people don't realize, is that like my godfather, like who I dedicated the film, like, I mean, those cats were staged in sit-ins at that time before they were doing the United States. Yeah. Like my godfather actually sat for 7 weeks in the recruitment office until they took him, and he became an aeronautical engineer, but he wasn't giving up. So many of them actually want to make sure that they participated in the regular units because it was by law in Canada, but it was just getting through the recruitment office.
It's incredible. I think it speaks, like when I'm listening to you, when I've watched this film, and I'm sure others as well, I'm thinking, the story of civil rights in Canada for Black communities should be rewritten. I feel like I'm learning it just now and seeing the characters and the leaders that are part of it. You mentioned Hugh Barnett, just thinking of people who congregated through an amazing event, created by your great uncle, but it was also a form of real education for the community, is what I also noticed in the film. There's Black youth who didn't get jobs, and so they, Walt would give them jobs, working at the event itself. You learn how to conduct yourself. This is how you learn to communicate with different people of different communities.
Yep.
And this is all a place of celebration across race, across religion, across denomination, and that kind of coming together. I think what was beautiful about what your uncle did is he was able to bring all of these different factions together, and it created something bigger than itself.
Well, we call that, we call it nowadays, it's called Canada.
There it is. Yeah, the cultural mosaic. The cultural mosaic.
But you just described everything that we talk about we want to do. We do it. We definitely do it. But the problem is that when you have money and employment, it's self-entitlement from the mainstream culture. Like, for instance, the federal government for the longest time, there was this huge complaint is that, hire more visible minorities. If they represent, it was at that time 14% of the population, well then give them 14% of the job. But then you hear they're not qualified. So no, it's got nothing to do with the qualifications. It's got to do with nepotism. That's what it does. And actually, we look at different, especially if you look at our police forces and other things, it's about nepotism. The number of, and this is the thing too, the number of people that that get into positions that you went to school with, and personally that they have lower qualifications, or if they failed a psych exam, no, you shouldn't be a police officer. And I could sit there and I have a huge list. And I know my uncle went through the same thing. It's just like when he got onto the police force, he sat around and 5 guys he knew from football and other schools, they all had criminal records, except he didn't.
Right.
So, and this is the thing, is that it should be quality over quantity. And until we fix that, the system itself, and that's one thing I just want to show, this is how the system works.
This is what racism looks like in Canada, I think, as well. Maybe not just Canada, but as well. Like, I think oftentimes I find that a lot of people are struggling to see, what does racism in Canada look like?
And this is a subtle way. I remember I heard the ambassador for South Africa speak, and I remember everybody was just jeering him, and this was, eons ago. And there's two Aboriginal brothers got up beside me and they started clapping, and I didn't understand why they clapped at that time. And then because the South African ambassador said, well, apartheid, where do you think we got it from? And this is the one thing that we often forget. And that's why, like, when the film went to South Africa, I went to both sides, they really enjoyed it. But it's just that, it's the subtleties. Like, for instance, as I pointed out, the Freedom Festival, which again is Emancipation, the city, they became jealous. It's like the Obama effect. Oh, we got to get rid of everything that he did. Yeah. So they were charging my uncle, but yet they were pumping in $50,000 of taxpayers, well over $50,000 of taxpayers' money. That's $500,000 of taxpayers' money they went into a festival. And the one that was working, because it was run by someone Black, they didn't want anything to do with it. They were going to keep charging. And I really want to show that. And that happens to a lot of visible minorities, period, if they're successful. And I'm not going to, and this is the thing too, I'm going to really focus on the public sector, because in the private sector is reflective of what Canada is. It's the public sector that still has a long way to go. Yeah. And it's like people get to public sector jobs, says, this is mine and you can't take it. It's just like almost like the Trump effect. You lost the election, but no, this is mine. What you're seeing is that's a microcosm which occurs in the system, the macrocosm, and then when they look at you like, well, you're not supposed to be here. It's like, yes, I am.
Here. I think that I think Walter, I think what really shocked me most, well, not shocked me, but was really interesting about the film, and I wonder if this resonated with you, was how there was a correlation to what was happening in the United States with the Detroit riots and the burning of Grand Hall, which was a little before that, but just kind of in parallel, seeing how the influence of what was happening in the United States and how that was perceived
Yeah.
influenced heavily on how Black people were seen in Canada, and therefore it bled into, well, is this emancipation event good to have all, a community of Black people coming together from both sides, which was it was sad to see, but I never, because of course the Windsor and Detroit are so close. So yeah, I wondered if that was something, as you were creating this film, was that a revelation or something that shocked you, or?
No, because it's like growing up, it's like I spent most of my weekends going to Detroit, and so there was always there was this fluid movement. You'll hear a lot of the Motown artists like they didn't even think the borders existed.
Yeah, I
And
noticed that.
you had your birth certificate at the time before passports were fashionable. So it was, you're going back and forth. And at that time, it didn't matter whether you were Black, white, Asian. It's just like, because everyone had relatives over there. There's a very strong connection, like with the Underground Railroad, is because when a lot of people, they migrated back and moved back to the United States, is because they couldn't get jobs in Canada. From the little towns like North Bucks, Chatham, Windsor, they're like, okay, why are we doing this back and forth stuff? Let's just move over there. I go to Pontiac, and I there's like blocks of Chases that look like me. So there's that strong bond, especially in that area. And it's like also growing up, it was like, oh, who's playing out at church? Oh, Aretha Franklin's in town, or it's like you're going to hear the wine. It's just at the corner, it's just like, one of the Funk brothers stay there. Dick Gregory, a social activist, he lived in Windsor. I later found that out.
I didn't know that.
Well, Elise was saying, and I've talked to the narrator, Butch. I said, oh, did you hear this quote about, largest Juneteenth festival was never in America. It was in Windsor, Canada. And he's like, oh, shoot, boy. Yeah, of course. Dick used to live by Howard McCurdy, who was like, he's the one that named the NDP party. So anyways, it's just like there's this crazy connection which occurred is because and Dick Gregory's family lived in Windsor at that particular time, but I had no clue, just the strong influence. But that's the connection that it was, Stevie Wonder got his first start, in Windsor.
The Supremes winning.
The Supremes, that was really common. And it's just like, but then out of it, you get like generations that are influenced by like the American music, like, Tamia is from Windsor, Ontario. She was a little girl in the park, when I was camp supervisor. It's just, it's all these crazy connections. And when you go to Detroit, it's just like, the language. I remember when I moved to Ottawa doing my undergrad, everybody's like, where are you from? I said, Windsor. Where's that? I said, next to Detroit. Oh, you're American. They couldn't fathom the fact that it's just like, and then, but then also, because we're like this, we're insulated. We're like this peninsula down there. We are more, like the story itself, it's went to so many festivals. And what I love about the United States and what I love about the film, it's not just urban Black festivals, but it's mainstream festivals as well. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing what my uncle wanted to do, but not only here in Canada. Well, I still haven't, I already told you what happened here, but anyways, but in the United States, you got Miami urban, but then it got into Rhode Island. You're going all over the place. You got into Oakland, California, but now it's going to Franklin, Tennessee. And it's just like, it's the variety. And I do blame my film editor, John. Like, John's parents are straight from England, but him and I, when we were trying to flesh out this story together, we would clash. He goes, well, what do you mean by this? Well, obviously there was a universality that came out of it, and this is the result of it. And I think it had to go through that process. But getting back, Windsor and Detroit, they were really one and the same. It's like we're a suburb, really, of the United States of America. We have a joke back home. Canada doesn't start until you hit London, Ontario.
That's a good one. It's
No, but it's true. It's true. We're like, we're just this anomaly. But I mean is for Windsor rights, for those people, it doesn't matter what nationality. It's just like if you immigrate, Windsor rights or those people all have these crazy stories because it's a truly blue collar town, which just happens to be a suburb of America. So yeah.
Wow. Another question for you though. Was there anyone you asked to talk to for the documentary that didn't want to talk or was reluctant to talk about or even declined?
No. I think when, like, I've been out of Windsor for a couple decades now. And the thing is that I think everybody was just excited about telling their experiences. So because the story really wasn't about me, but it was about their experiences. And especially what I liked about the film too, you're living, it almost felt like, to me, and I don't know if you felt it as well, it felt like you were at the events.
Yeah.
You were at the beauty pageant.
Yeah.
You were at the award ceremonies, and I wanted you to get that feel. And it's just like their stories, they were just like, they were so good. Where no, I had just chosen those particular folks. My godmother, 97, because she really didn't have anything nice to say about Uncle Walt. She was at the end.
I loved her. She was great when she was talking about her job that she was asked to clean the store. And
she ripped up the application. Yeah. She's but that was her. That was when she died last year, I'm like going, wow, but that generation, and there's also George Thomas that passed away as well. There was one thing I did with him, and I wish I would have got it. And I said, why? He goes, I really don't want to talk about your uncle. Well, George is okay. Well, he still owes my mother money. His mother's been dead for over 50 years, but he still remembers that. So it's like those that were close to their 90s, they had they like the way that they looked at Uncle Walt was far different than the way that the younger ones, that the ones that are in their 70s, because they got jobs there.
Wow.
And so they all have it's just like they have the different perspectives. And I also want to show, and it was really important because I want to show that my uncle was a human being. He had his flaws. He was not perfect. Mm-hmm. Definitely not perfect.
But I also, what I kind of liked about the imperfection, I thought it also spoke to the fact that I think in a lot of situations when we talk about advocacy work or leaders, we think that there's like you're going to have endless amount of resources. Yeah. And that's not really the reality, when you're going through it. I mean, when we put it into context, this is an incredible man doing incredible work at a time where he's also faced with racism in real time, and it caused barriers for him and caused issues along the way. And so it's, I think
it just because he believed the event so much, there was just no stopping him. He was relentless, and for him it was like it's almost like this Arabic proverb. It's one of my favorite proverbs. It's like I remember Muhammad Good, guy, PhD I met years ago in Ottawa. He said, he told me, it says, it's my responsibility to do the best I can, but it is not my responsibility to succeed. And through all that, he did the best he could. And in doing so, I think he succeeded like no one before him, or Absolutely. No one after. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was something that hasn't been yet to be recreated again to that scale. So
I don't think you can have anything like that. And the reason I'm saying is because as I tell everyone, it's just like growing up in Windsor, Ontario, I grew up in this 8-block radius, and we didn't have much, but we had everything. It's like you couldn't starve. It's like you could go next door. I'll go see my cousins, the Kerseys, or I'll go Mrs. Johnson's, and it's just like everybody was always like there for one another. And I think over time we've lost that sense of community. In Windsor, I know it was in the early 80s where a lot of my friends, we were all going to the same elementary school. They went and the city opened up because we could only live in 2 different areas in Windsor. And so they opened up this area in Riverside, and they call it the Villages. And I don't know why they called it Villages. And as I think about it, it sort of had this African flavor to it. So that's why I think a lot of people left the downtown neighborhood and actually moved out to the Villages. But
Villages, yeah.
Yeah. So and so then it's just like everybody's actually, and another thing too, as Mr. Shreve used to tell me, he's like, because I do my family reunion and I do it every 3 years. And he says, you can't do it like it before. I said, why not? Because people have money. Like, you gain a little bit of economic power. It's just like, do you really want to go to this community event every year? Or are you going to actually diversify and just take off and go here and there? And so I think that collectively, especially in this country, as I explained the triangle, it's like when we all have to get over ourselves and who we are, where we're from. Everyone's here now. And like a friend of mine from Carleton University who I used to work out with, we always argue, on the bus as we're going to the gym. I always argue about black this and I'm Black American. I used to say, and he says, well, no, we're all the same. We're all the same. And that guy was let me see, the father of Canadian hip hop, Maestro Fresh West. And in his line, let your backbone slide, he said, it doesn't matter who you are or where you went, we all originate from the same descent. I make a lot of sense. And until we all recognize that, you can't have anything like this. You really can't. And I'm glad it's there. There's a blueprint, but it's just allowing just the people to understand really what getting together is, and that's not just Black, but I mean just everyone in themselves. Yeah. So yeah.
The power in numbers, the power in working together.
Oh yeah. Well, where else in the film? Like, my goodness, I have my buddy Zoran Matrovsky, who's Serbian, and I have my buddy Barry Makare, who's Croatian. I got the communities coming together. Hey, it's double. Hey, double. So it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a country of people who, from all over. This is. Oh yeah, actually, like, I'm thinking so much material. How about a part 2? Why not make this? Why not make this a 2-hour documentary? Or
I have this thing. I know my attention span. I just want to make sure. I think the movie, now that I look back, could be paused in about 2 or 3 sections just to let people reflect. But as a first-time filmmaker, I didn't know all those innuendos until after I was done. I might do a re-edit. Who knows, before it gets sent out there in the educational scene. But I just wanted to make sure that the story was told. And by the time you get to the end of it, and any documentary filmmaker will tell you, oh, I'm so sick of it, because I kept saying that all the time. It's like, I can't take this anymore. Because it's like you just put so much into it. And then once you cross that finish line, I'm like looking at him, snapping at my film editor, I don't want to see you anymore, But then it's just like you take that pause and you can come back together. But no, there's another project which I just started working on.
Ooh.
And so I guess... it's going to be on Canada's First Black Detective, which I think is who's a distant cousin as well. So I think the message in that, and given the fact that we're Black Lives Matter and everything else, so we'll see what happens with that. I'm really excited about that. I really, truly am. So yeah,
I'm intrigued. That sounds First Black Detective.
Yeah,
I mean, that's so interesting. I mean, I feel like as our conversations have been going, and even conversations we've had prior to this, I feel like, do I know anything about Black history in Canada? It's like there's so much richness, there's so much there, and I think that's what is beautiful as well, is that this film is inspiring people. It's going to be teaching people, seeing parts of Canada's history that they've never heard before, in a way that they've never heard before. And it's beautiful, and it's thought-provoking, and it teaches all of us something about community and the power of networking. I think it also speaks to how Black people have contributed to Canadian society for so long. And with the goal to work in groups and work together and work with all sorts of people with all walks of life, which I really, really loved about that, because I think that speaks to a lot of the values that we want to hold here in Canada. Another question I had, though, were there a lot of pictures from the event that you found when putting the documents together? Because I found that the pictures, the archives, where did you get all of those from? Did you have to, contact a lot of different people, or did you just?
They were there. The problem was sifting through everything and actually just making sure it fits in with the storyline. I probably left out, there's probably about 300 or 400 more photos that actually could have been used.
Wow.
Like I said, it was heavily, this thing went on for, 3 decades, right? So, and there are a lot of photos, and my uncle's very good at schmoozing, a lot of the photographers. I know Spike Bell gave us some beautiful photos. Then you have the museums where a lot of the elders, they donated it to. It was used to be the North American Black Historical Museum. Now it's called the Amherstburg Freedom Museum. There's the North Star Museum. There's the North Buxton Museum. So everyone had a piece of something. to give. And then it's just like my aunt just going in and one of my aunts, great aunts, it's like she had a pile of pictures, and there's tons more out there, but it was just, the Windsor Star. I can't fail to mention the Windsor Star. CBC provided a lot of the great video footage, and NFB as well. But so there's a lot, but it's just getting everyone together. One of the difficulties I had, I would call long distance, and I know I called my Aunt Ione to ask her for something, and she wouldn't pick up her phone. Then I had to call up a relative, cousin, to call because she thought I was a bill collector, and that happened a lot of times.
Oh
So it's like,
no.
if I knew that was you, boy, I would answer the phone. I'm like, pick up the phone. And so often I would actually have to like, all right, I'm taking off to Trudeau Airport. I got to fly out of here. I got to go to Ottawa International Airport and fly down to Windsor. And it's like, just give me the stuff. Oh yeah, here you go. All you got to do is just send it by email. So anyways, that was a daunting task. It was funny. I got to see, it did help where like my 97-year-old godmother, I got to see her like every 2 months because I was always there. And I always made it a point to go have lunch with her. So, so those last 5 years, that was fantastic from that standpoint. But oh man.
Oh my God, yeah, I need those pictures soon. It's me, me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
What was the most startling thing you found out while doing the documentary that you didn't know?
I think it had to be North Buxton, where Uncle Walt, he stayed with my great grandfather, whatever, and your great grandfather, and just once they were great. The museum, when they sent me the stuff, I didn't know how to use it, and then it was when I came upon that Ebony magazine, the first Black Power town in North America, that I knew about the vote just because my cousin Arlie Robbins wrote The Legacy of Buxton. So I knew a bit about that, but just I had no idea how everything just tied in, and I was excited about using that picture where you see, a Black teacher with a whole bunch of mixed kids together. Like, I mean, I think that's from the 1900 something, which at that time you don't see that. And I've always wanted to use that photo for something. And I had an opportunity, but for me, that was surprising because it was like just how it just came together. I'm like, well, oh, okay, all right, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it made me think. So North Buxton, I mean, like an all Black town, all Black farmers. I thought it made me think of Africville, which is in the Maritimes in Nova Scotia. That was an all Black community as well that was actually, destroyed, unfortunately. But it just
the problem, not the problem, but again, we had, yes, they owned their own farms and they had their own property. Africville, how they treated the Black Nova Scotians out there, they wouldn't even allow them to own their own property. Plus, you had that economic backing because, again, we had Big Brother America next door, and we knew we could get jobs or we get people buying our products over there. You didn't have that out east.
No, that's true. That is true. The proximity to the border. One thing too that I found really interesting was the I think it was in 1856, I believe, the march to 10 Mile. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I really found that so interesting.
Well, just the whole community got together just because, I forget his name, but the incumbent was running on an anti-Black platform.
Yes.
They wanted to pump no more money into communities. They just wanted to actually close all the communities. So they all got together, and that was the first really real political action which occurred by free Blacks walking 10 miles, marching to vote, and they ended up voting him out of office, which would be Frederick Douglass. I forget what's his name. There was a committee right after the Civil War because they didn't know what to do with all these free slaves. And so Frederick Douglass and Stanton, I forget his last name. But anyways, they all got together and they came and they visited and they found out all these things which were going on in that community. And for the 15th Amendment, in the debate, they used that as an example that blacks were capable of being politically active.
In spite of, yeah, I found that really,
Yeah,
interesting.
and that came from Canada, and it came from here and got passed down in the United States.
Right? Yeah.
And that's what we don't know. Like, I mean, the Freeman's Hospital, which is Howard University in Washington, they're like, I mean, I think there were 4 doctors that discovered it, and 2 were all educated in North Buxton.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of your first congressmen and everything else, North Buxton, senators, North Buxton. It's just because there was really a waiting list to get into that school, because Reverend William King was who was white, but he actually educated, because he's always felt that blacks could be just as equal as whites.
Yes.
And that's why the standards were so high. And it's just like they were learning everything. And the surrounding white communities wanted to get into that school. That's why he had pictures that even before that.
Right. Wow. It's just incredible. I just want to thank you so much for being with us and, having this amazing conversation, because, as somebody who is, doing advocacy work with Black Lives Matter Fredericton, which is something I'm so passionate about, we really want to be, spreading education and awareness about Black history, Black Canadian history, Black Canadian culture, and just seeing how incredible it is to speak with yourself and have your story as a form of a way for us to use to educate others. This is a film that will be shown hopefully in schools all over the place, as they are, not just in film festivals and not just in high schools and not just in universities, but something that can be shared among friends. And just that the more people that hear about this story, I think the more better we'll be able to understand each other, in different communities. And then when we understand each other better, then we can, collectively make decisions that's going to impact everybody, which I think is so important. One of the best things that I appreciate about activism or Black activism is that it is you're predisposed to intersectionality, to networking with other people and uplifting. There's no Black liberation without Indigenous liberation. And so I think I really, really am so thankful that you're here. So thankful for what you've represented. Your story is incredible. And, keep sharing. And I'm so excited to hear what you'll do next as well.
Oh, well, thanks. And I just want to, again, going back to the universality, I just want to call it it's the Black experience in Canada. Because it doesn't matter whether you just got here or whether you've been here for generations. It is experience, what you're experiencing in so many different ways. And but also, like, again, I didn't want to make it like in your face. It's like, oh, you did this, you did that. No, because you want to invite the mainstream population. You want them to laugh. And that's where, like I said, John was, my film editor, was so important, is because I think out of this, and I get goosebumps thinking about it, that's where we found the universality. You're willing to listen, you're willing to see things that you weren't able to see. And it doesn't matter what culture you're from. And I again, second one, keeping my fingers crossed. I hope to do that as well. So, and I think I know what I'm doing now, so I'm going to keep trying. So.
Oh, no, I'm sure it will be just amazing. And thank you so, so much. I really appreciate your story. Amazing work.
Thanks. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking care, being a part of this amazing session. And yeah, have a wonderful evening.